The flight from Heathrow landed just after lunch. It's 7 hours behind UK time, so whilst the body might want to sleep, after dropping bags off at the hotel, there's exploring to be done. The 600-foot Calgary Tower opened in June 1968, offering a great view of the city and wider Alberta landscape. Norm and Sue sought out a beer, for research purposes of course. Sadly, it was pants. The next day, they boarded a coach for the 80-mile trip to Banff, stopping about halfway to take photographs and grab a brew. Mount Norquay affords great views of Banff, beautiful pine forests, lakes fed by melting snow, bighorn sheep, deer and elk, couples from Blackpool, and even Neil practicing his French. Nearby is Lake Minnewanka. Yep, Lake Minnewanka. Next up, Lake Louise. Renamed after Queen Victoria's fourth daughter in 1884 by the Canadian Pacific Railway. Its striking turquoise color comes from glacial flower. The lake sits at over 5,000 feet above sea level and is 220 feet deep. The river is named Bow because local indigenous peoples historically made longbows from the Douglas fir trees growing along its banks. To the Cree Nation, the river was known as Manachibun Sipi, meaning the place from which longbows are taken. Emerald Lake is the largest lake in Yoho National Park, just a couple of miles into British Columbia. The main path is over 3 miles long. The Burrows and the Lomaxes didn't do all of that. Not when there's a lodge with a bar. And besides, Norm seems puzzled as to how the place got its name. The tour group itinerary allowed for some time to see the town itself. A very pretty place, especially in the sharp spring sunshine. The coach tour resumed the following day. This is one stop near to the famous spiral rail tunnels. Natural bridge formed as the powerful Kicking Horse River eroded softer rock beneath harder layers, essentially carving a tunnel through the limestone cliff. What was once a waterfall has been sculpted into a natural arch by the force of the water. The final attraction to tick off the list in Banff is the cable car ride up the 7,486 feet Sulphur Mountain. Asked if their husbands were enjoying the trip so far, the girls seemed to think they were. The original Banff gondola was built in 1959, then rebuilt in 1997. At the summit station, as well as stunning views, there's a cafe, a bar, a restaurant, and a function room. Oh yes, and a helicopter pad if you need it. The Rocky Mountaineer, one of the key reasons this holiday was chosen, was boarded at Banff Station. The journey takes 2 full days to reach Vancouver, with a night's layover in Kamloops. The train doubles in length here as the service from Jasper is added to the consist. Travel in Gold Leaf class includes panoramic views from the carriage upper level whilst gourmet meals are enjoyed downstairs. Leaving Banff, the train passes through Lake Louise, swinging west across into British Columbia via Kicking Horse Pass, before descending through the famous spiral tunnels. Opened in 1909, these tunnels reduce the gradient from a scary 1 in 22 to a much safer 1 in 45.
just try to remember the how far it is from us now and the elevation difference. Because later on you're going to be looking at it very differently. Alright, is everybody ready for that exercise? You're going to close your eyes? Yes? Alright, close your eyes everybody. I'm watching.
Crossing the Rockies with a railway was no mean feat for those engineers of 150 years ago. It's great that they did, so travelers can enjoy such fantastic scenery, all whilst downing a gin and tonic. This lot seemed to have had a few. Whilst the panoramic roof allows guests to enjoy nature from a luxury seat, sometimes you can't beat the rush of wind through your hair, if you are lucky enough to have any. Each car has a veranda, and so Sue tries out this traditional North American rail experience. But soon, the train approaches Kamloops. Here, our group will detrain for a night in a local hotel. Everyone is well fed, watered and tired. So they retire to their rooms, because tomorrow is an early start. Now twice the length, the Rocky Mountaineer continues its journey west, having switched from the Canadian National to the Canadian Pacific Line. Almost all of the way, crisscrossing the Thompson River, with its twists, turns, and stunning gorges. Near to Lytton, we see the so-called Frog Rock. A further 40 miles south is Hell's Gate. The Rocky Mountaineer is currently the only scheduled passenger train working on this line. Usually, the 2-mile-long freight trains are switched into passing loops, so our train has priority. But this is not always the case. As the train descends out of the high mountain area, speeds pick up, and Neil and Steph enjoy that veranda feeling. Vancouver is approached during a glorious sunset. One of the best rail journeys in the world, crossing the Canadian Rockies, is all too soon over. Vancouver, British Columbia. A day to explore, before the next stage of this expedition begins. The cruise to Alaska. Every city in Canada seems to have a tower, and the tour guides can't resist them. But it is a good way to see the town and the surrounding country. There's a good view of last night's hotel, adjacent to the berth for the cruise ships. Norm, of course, had to take a picture of the rail yard. Hey, look at this. They have a Stanley Park, just like Blackpool does. They don't have totem poles in Stanley Park, Blackpool, but they have plenty here. Even ones hidden in the trees. After taking in some views of the harbour, the guide announced that the next stop would be the famous Granville Island. We assume this outlet is famous for having a cement factory in the middle of it. There were some decent food places, and for the arty types, a gallery or two. All seemed relieved when it was time to board the ship. The Seven Seas Explorer. There was plenty of opportunity to have a look around, take a drink, and enjoy some last views of Vancouver before the ship set sail.
I meant a square on that. think my drink's excited, even if we're not.
What's your excited?
Of course I am. Bye bye Vancouver.
The Seven Seas Explorer was built in Italy and launched in 2015. She uses diesel-electric propulsion, with 43,000 horsepower supplied by 4 massive diesels. About half that power is used to provide electricity for the hotel part of the ship, the rest for pushing her 55,000 tons along at up to 19 knots. The first, and part of the second day at sea, involved sailing through the inside passage to Ketchikan. The inclement weather encouraged guests to stay inside, and to enjoy their luxurious surroundings. Eating and drinking was, naturally, high on the agenda, or simply relaxing in the superb bedrooms. Neil and Steph chose to take in one of the fabulous shows. Seven Seas Explorer has arrived in Ketchikan, Alaska, USA. Unable to dock, the ship's tenders are used to take guests to the waiting area on the dockside, to await their various tours. The indigenous peoples, the Tlingit, and the Hai Der, have cultural ties here going back thousands of years.
What are they doing? They're courting, mating, yeah. They're getting ready.
Today, the main industries are fishing, forestry, and tourism. But carving totem poles thrives too. The master sculptor here explained how it takes many months to finish each one. Juneau is the capital of Alaska, established in 1880, right in the thick of a major gold rush. Under moody skies, they disembarked, eager to see what Juneau had to offer. What delights might await them? Steph didn't buy this in the end. The 45-minute walk to Mendenhall Glacier and Nugget Falls was well worth it. Suddenly, one of life's key questions was unexpectedly answered. In the afternoon, there came the whale-watching trip during which Neil and Steph captured these great pictures.
Put it on sale today.
The scenery around Douglas and Shelter Islands is simply magical. To cap off the day, on the return to Juneau, a pod of orcas was seen. Cruise Day 5 saw the ship dock at Skagway, known as Gateway to the Klondike. This historic city on the Tyre Inlet has retained much of its 19th century looks. If the paved roads were returned to dirt, you'd be right back there. Norm and Sue went for coffee and donuts. Meanwhile, the Lomaxes visited a brothel. A bargain at $20 no doubt. The White Pass Railway, which, by the way, used to run down the center of the main street, is a must-do for visitors to this part of the world. It took gold prospectors through the mountains, saving countless lives. Hundreds died in the vicious Alaskan winter, mainly through lack of food and critical supplies. From the hard wooden seating in the carriages, passengers can glance back at their cruise ships, now way below them. The commentary on the train described this as the world's largest steel cantilever bridge in 1901. The Brits wondered why the steel cantilever fourth bridge, some 100 times bigger, and completed 10 years earlier, didn't count. Nearing the summit, the USA-Canadian border is crossed briefly. The train then enters a specially constructed loop line before descending back down the valley. On the approach to Skagway, number 73, one of the two steam locomotives here, is seen getting ready to haul a special. It's a good reason to come back one day. Retracing the route overnight, down the Tyre and Chilkoot inlets, by next morning, Seven Seas Explorer is tied up at Hoona. There is a short walk to a cable car, a ride over a small hill to Isis Strait Point. Here there are restaurants, a sculpture of an orca by Wyland, the acclaimed artist and conservationist. Neil and Steph have found a bar during a nice walk around the headland. All under immaculate blue skies. There is another cable car here at Hoona, the Sky Peak Gondola. This one takes guests 1,500 feet up the Hoona mountain. Some don't like the climb as much as some others, and some are just plain chilled out with it all. It was a bit cold up top, but the views were really sensational. This was the final shore visit of the cruise. No more disembarkations before the termination point in Whittier, but there are still things to see along the way. Meanwhile, it's back to eating and drinking. Waking up the next morning, cruise passengers were greeted by sea ice, grey skies, and an eerie silence broken only by the gentle hum of the ship's engines. It was much colder now, as the ship slowly sailed past the magnificent wild landscape, still almost completely snow-covered on this spring day. A very harsh environment indeed. Then, eventually, the Hubbard Glacier came into view. Whittier, once a secret US Army base, inevitably covered with mist, has only one way in or out. The Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel forces road and rail to share the space, delaying the transfer buses for 20 minutes on their 60-mile drive to Anchorage Airport. Norm had always wanted to visit Anchorage, But having seen what a dump it is, he is better now. At least Sue seems happy. There was a short 3-hour flight to Seattle, then an 11-hour red-eye back to London Heathrow. The end of a very enjoyable and successful holiday.